Hi friends, this is CC and welcome to Hobby Hands. In this vlog, we're going to turn this into this. Yes friends, we're going to build this, which is the Matchbox 1/72 scale model of the Westland Wessex. And the model number is PK-133. Let's start by doing a quick unboxing of this model. Let's have a look. To begin with, the parts are not bagged and straight in the box, and that's all there. The first thing we'll look at is the instruction manual. It's printed on very old paper. It looks like parchment paper, and the decals are also there, but thankfully they're not yellow. Let's have a look at the plastic. There's 3 sprues in 3 different colors. There's not a lot of flash, which is quite good. There's no panel, or the panel lines are raised, but very fine raised panel lines. Not a lot of detail, so I need to do some scribing. This is the rest of the body, and that's in dark grey. And this is a sort of light green with the rotor blades and the 4-bladed tail rotor, and a console with all raised details. And this is the clear sprue, which has a bit of distortion. Quite excited, let's have a look at this. So the first thing we're going to do is build the cockpit, and let's do that now. Right, that's the interior parts are painted mostly in grey. I've stuck the small parts into the cockpit floor so we don't lose them. We'll paint the inside of the fuselage as well. It's not a lot of detail from the inside. Alright, now what I'm doing here is, this is floor polish, and I'm dipping all the clear parts into the floor polish. So dip, shake off the excess, like that, and then just blot out any remaining one onto the kitchen towel. And store it inside a box with a cover so the dust doesn't settle on it. At this point, what I'm doing is creating some recessed panel line using the scriber. So we run the scriber through a few times, very lightly initially, and then each time that we go through, more and more pressure. Now let's put the cockpit parts together. So there's the seats, and then the bulkhead, and the center console. And the other parts are for the floor and another bulkhead for the back of the heli. Alright, so what I'm doing now is I'm just giving the interior parts a flat varnish. Alright, so now I'm doing the windows before I put the 2 fuselage halves together and the cockpit. So just make sure that the windows are flush with the body of the heli. Alright, time to put in the bulkhead and the floor for the back of the heli. Now I'm going to also stick the cockpit. Now we prepare to stick the two fuselage halves together. Alright, now put the two halves together and we start to glue the two halves, and we use some masking tape as usual to hold the two fuselage halves together. I'm using a lot of masking tape because this is a pretty big heli. There you go. Done. Alright, now that the glue has dried, what I'm doing is applying putty on the seam lines. This one here is the part of the engine cover. Alright, so now that the putty has dried, we are going to sand it off or sand it down. And the first sanding stick that I use is of the 600 grit. Next I use an 800 grit sanding stick. Followed by 2000 grit. And lastly I'll use a 6000 grit. Just gluing the tail onto the heli. And now we do the side door. What I'm doing here is gluing in the two railings that hold that sliding side door. It can actually slide open. What we're doing here is gluing in the nose of the heli with the very iconic air intake in front. Alright, time to put the canopy on. Once the canopy is stuck on, we also need to glue in the two side windows or doors. I think they're meant to be doors. Alright, now what we're doing is we're preparing to paint the model, and the first thing we need to do is to mask the clear pieces. I'm doing this for the side windows now. And I use a little toothpick to clear the air bubbles. There's one window here which is like a bubble, and that's the challenging one to try and mask. I'm using a very sharp blade here to cut the mask. Just gonna show you as well masking of the front windscreen. Actually, in this case, just showing you how I mask the side windows or doors. Alright, all the masking is done, and what I'm doing here is just giving the exposed frames a coating of the interior color, which is like a medium gray. Once the frame paint has dried, we start to apply the first camouflage color. Alright, the first camouflage color has dried. So now what we're doing is painting on the second camouflage color. Alright, all the camouflage is done. So what I'm doing here is giving the whole model a gloss varnish. Alright, now the gloss varnish has dried, so the next thing that we will do is to put panel line wash. In this case I'm using black panel line wash. Alright, now the panel line wash has dried, so what we do is get some thinner and a cotton bud or two, and just clean up the splodges. So I do this cleaning in an up-down direction relative to the model. That's so that if in case there's any streaks, it will look natural from the downwash of the rotor blades. Okay, all the cleanup has been done now. So the next step is to apply decals. I'm getting a bit nervous with these decals because they are quite old. Don't know how they will perform. Luckily the decals have not yellowed. So the decal comes as one whole piece. I've cut it into three. That first one there is common to both versions, and this version here is for the Royal Australian Navy, but the colors or the camouflage colors that I've used is actually for the Royal Air Force Wessex. So these decals are actually as old as the kit. They have not been refreshed. So I'm going to test it out first. I'm going to try this spare one here. Alright, so we've got one spare one in case this one disintegrates. Yeah, the decals are not good already, they're torn. And it looks like it's going to start disintegrating. The other problem with old decals is the glue might not be effective anymore on the back of the decal. This is the Royal Navy words. And unfortunately the decal has disintegrated as well. I've actually now put all the decals on, or whatever I could put on I've done, and I'm giving the decals a coating of gloss clear. This is to protect the decals. At this stage, what I would normally do is give the model a dry brush. This is to pick out the high parts. So with the rotor blade hub, I'm using silver as the color to do the dry brushing. And for the rest of the aircraft, just use a bit of white. So what you do is get some paint on the brush, get rid of most of it on the kitchen towel, and then lightly brush it across the parts. It gives that light and shadow effect. Now on the heli itself. Alright, so the next step is to give the whole model a flat varnish. So I'm doing here. The next thing we're going to do here is to assemble the model. This part that I'm building here is the winch. A lot of little sub-assemblies that we'll build first, and then we'll attach it onto the aircraft. This is the filter of the air intake that I'm sticking onto the nose of the heli. I had to check to make sure it was the right way up when I assemble it. Alright, so the next thing we're going to assemble is the landing gear. It's going to be a little bit fiddly because there's only 2 landing spots. So I'll use one piece as a guide and stick the second piece in first. Make sure that the angle is correct. When the wheels go on, the wheels are pointing in the right direction. And the next thing we do is then to stick the brace on. Like that. Looks right. Alright, this is the tail wheel. It's tiny, but it's made up of like two or three parts, so it's quite fiddly. Alright, and we're going to stick the tail wheel onto the heli now. This is an antenna, and we're sticking it to the front of the Wessex per the instructions. Alright, so the next thing we're going to put onto the Wessex is these little pieces here, which look like just some sort of a brace. Alright. So now I'm assembling the main rotor blade, made up of quite a few pieces. Alright, so to make sure that the blades are actually well aligned, I'm using the lines on the cutting mat, which is good enough to make sure we get right angles between two blades. There you go, 3 done. Now the last blade has gone on. Again, using the squares on the cutting mat to square up the 4 rotor blades. And just leave it to dry. So now we're sticking in the tail rotor blade. Right, that's just a dry fit. Now we're using glue. So just make sure it's aligned with the body. Okay, done. And it turns. The tail rotor blade actually turns. Okay, just eyeball it to make sure that it's sitting square against in reference to the body. Alright, so now all the rotor blades have dried. Let's just put it on to do a quick test fit of the main rotor blade. Perfect. So now we just complete it by putting the last piece of the rotor head. Alright, I'm going to do here is create some stretch sprue. This is for a bit of rigging that we're going to do. Oops. Alright, you probably can't see it on the screen, but there it is. The stretch sprue. Alright, done. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with it. And this is what I'm doing with it. Some glue on the mast and then stick the stretch sprue onto the mast. Once the glue is dry, then we stick the stretch sprue to the second mast, like that. So we put some glue under the second mast, and there you go. So now we're going to connect it to the third mast there. and done. So we're going to do 2 lines per side. As you can see here, it's all done. And that's done with stretch sprue, and I've just painted it in a metallic grey, so it looks like wires or steel wires. And now that's done. Alright, so the next step that we're going to do is to remove the masking tape from the clear windows. This is a little bubble window. It's not too bad. There's no seepage underneath the masking tape. So the next thing that we're going to do here is remove the masking tape from the side windows or from the door. So it's a bit tricky because it's got a it bulges out as well. Alright, some of the window pieces are actually a little bit dirty, so I have to clean it up after this. Okay, so now the Wessex is complete. All the masking has been removed. I've also painted the window frames in black, painted a little light at the tail of the heli, and yep, and also put in the windscreen wipers. So just looking back now, the model is actually quite okay to put together. The only thing that I had to do extra was to put in panel lines, and the trouble I had a bit of trouble here because of the details on both sides of the seam line, so it's a little bit difficult to try and sand something like that. So the only real problem I had was with the decals, which kept disintegrating on me. So see, that's a little bit there disintegrated. I had to use the Royal Navy decals from another kit because the original one, the one that came with this kit, disintegrated. There's a B on one side and the other B disintegrated, and the little danger decal is actually also partly disintegrated. So normally if you get old decals like this, you might benefit from a couple of coats of gloss clear to make sure that the piece doesn't disintegrate. In hindsight, I should have done that. So the stencils around the windows had disintegrated as well. And also the other thing I should have used is this decal solution here, so that the sides of the decals do not silver. So you can see the printing was quite poor, as these red and white stripes are actually too big for the tail rotor blade, so I painted my own in. Otherwise, quite a nice model for its age. Let's put on the rotor blade and show you the final product, the final heli. I'm going to throw out the decals, and the rotor blade turns, so that's the tail rotor blade. And there you go. Side view, a top view, view from the tail, view from the nose, and the bottom view. Not a lot to see at the bottom. Bit of a close-up here. Close-up of the tail. So this door is meant to be able to slide, but I've glued it in because there's not a lot of internal details. So there you go, friends. Hope you enjoyed this vlog. Please subscribe to my channel and please give me a like. And thank you very much for watching.